Good morning, guys. What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. I just got back from the gym and my arms are extremely dead. I'm like shaking right now. Feels good though. It's a good type of shake. So let's get down to the shop and see what we're working on today. Any of you guys play the new Call of Duty yet? The new Modern Warfare 2? I pre-ordered it, played the beta, had some fun, and I've been playing it like all week since it came out. It's pretty fun. Let me know what you guys think, because my issues with it are like more than maps. Like more than anything, I hate the whole map loadout in the game. Like the weapons, the unlock system, I like the creativity, but it is really tedious that you got to figure out like a 14 series polymetric equation to figure out how to get a red dot sight for one gun type thing. But other than that, yeah, to me the maps are absolutely garbage, every single one of them. But the gameplay, I don't know. I think it's pretty good, like all things considered. And for those people that don't like Call of Duty in general, it's the same thing every year. Eat a wiener. Let me know what you guys think. This thing really needs an oil change too. It just crossed over the 5,000 mile mark, and I bought the oil. I still need to go get a filter. I just don't have any time this week to change it. So hopefully she holds out on me. So I know this is far from the realm of the type of car that I usually work on, seeing as we still have the Purple 86 up there, because I'm still waiting on the exhaust hangers for that. So by the time this video is being filmed, we're a few videos probably past this car getting done. But yeah, so this Mustang here, I don't know what generation this is exactly. I think this one's a 2-valve. I don't know nothing about American cars, but this one, if you can't already see, has got a choo-choo right there. So that's essentially what we're doing. He did the basic work. He got some sort of turbo headers. Not particularly pleased on the style and the mounting of this, because if you notice, there's a turbo here, but we're missing another key component, which would be the wastegate. And if you look even closer, there's no wastegate provision on this manifold anywhere. So that's one of the things that we got to add, is we got to try and add a wastegate port somewhere down there before the flange, try and make it flow, you know, with something a little bit. But yeah, so this whole car is just going to get a bunch of turbo work. As you can see, he's already kind of got the intercooler mounted, although that does have to be changed. It has to be slid over like 2 inches to the left more. But otherwise, yeah, let's kind of jump right into this. Today's video is going to be a little bit more basic and straight cut, because there's a lot of work, a lot of work that has to be done before I can even start touching the turbo components. And that would be all of this here, because you can see we really don't have any room. This compressor housing needs to be clocked, and so there's a few things that we have to do first. And for example, one of those things I haven't completely decided yet, but I'm probably going to chop this midsection of the core support out between the radiator mounts, and then I'm going to make something new for that. Only concern is then he's probably going to have to figure out something to do with this guy here, the hood support. So I'm going to try and avoid doing that. But essentially, we have to try and lean this radiator and the condenser, because he has both AC and normal cooling system. We got to try and lean this forward, essentially giving us a style of V-mount radiator. So it'll help with cooling, I think, from what I understand the way V-mounts work. But most importantly, it'll give us the room that we need. And then in one of the boxes, because this car is full of boxes, and on top of the roof there's a few more, there's a 90-degree vibrant weld-on fitting for the compressor housing. So essentially I'm going to have to clock this turbo to face the compressor housing towards the front, and then I'm going to weld that 90 onto there, so that way it's shooting out that side. Because if you didn't notice, the exhaust port is facing the driver's side. Now let me show you why that's kind of a problem. The problem lies here because of this facing this way. If you look over here, there's just a whole mess of stuff down here. So you got power steering lines, you got lower radiator hose, you got harness loom, because there's really anywhere to put an exhaust system. So he's going to be doing a frontal exit. So he doesn't want to chop up the hood, because this is a Cobra hood, I think he said. So, and I mean, the car's in really good shape. I don't blame him for not wanting to chop that up. So he has a spare bumper, which is behind the car, that he doesn't mind cutting into. So he wants to do a bumper exit. So we got to try and run this, clean some stuff up down there. He said we can bend lines out of the way, do what we need to do to make it fit. But this essentially has to go out down there. The reason I want this to, I'm going to have to modify the compressor housing to face this way, is so I can run the charge pipe out through here and then down over there to the intercooler, and then obviously back up into the throttle body up there, through over there, but then it also just makes everything just slightly more tricky. Not that I won't be able to do it, it's just more convenient if this turbo is flipped 180, so the exhaust could shoot out straight right there, and then this stuff could just ease right on over there, and life would be grand. But it doesn't always work that way because we can't flip this around, because you can see the tight clearance already. So when this is over here, this won't even sit on the flange completely, because the turbo, if you notice, is not sitting straight up. It is angled backwards. The flange there tilts to the back. So with the compressor housing on this side, it just rams right into the alternator pulley and the water pump. So just working with within our realm. And the option was for me to modify this slightly, but I really don't feel like doing that, and trying to keep it within a budget for the guy. So working with what we got here is going to be best. So enough dragging this on. Let's try and figure out how we can take some of this apart and lean that radiator forward to get the little bit of clearance that we need. About 20 seconds in, and I'm already seeing issues here. So I took the radiator out so I could try and mock up the condenser to figure out. So this is obviously a pretty decent angle here, like, and I'll get some light in there for you. But yeah, that's not too bad. I'm working on loosening the compressor so I can clock that to see where the radiator is going to sit. But the issue that I'm having is I can't bring the condenser as far forward as I like, because I don't know how well you can see it, but right here it is hitting. And this whole assembly here is part of all of that, which is part of the headlight brackets. So ideally, to get the condenser to come forward as much as we would pretty much need to, I'm going to try and mess with it some more, but at least for immediate judgment, this has to come much more forward, which means this will all have to go away, which means this would all have to be remade as tubular, which is going to obviously not be very cheap, at least an extra couple $100. So then the other concern is that even if this was all out of the way, this can't come too far forward because of the hood latch. So yeah, trying to work these things out here, but at least for the short term, I'm going to just clock the compressor housing, see what we're looking like, if I can move the radiator back and just make some new mounting pegs down there. It'll be a little close to the pipes there, but nothing some Cerakote can't help with or fix or whatever. So I think we're going to be alright actually. After test fitting this a little bit more, clocking the turbo actually made a lot more room than anticipated, so I should be able to just straight up chop this and throw on the 90-degree piece that I'm going to weld onto it, so the radiator looks like it can actually stay in its factory spot, which would be really nice. So the only other concern I'm having, because I wanted to lean it forward, is for the wastegate spot there. So I'm just going to use a piece of schedule pipe, like a 90. And yeah, it'll be close, but I think we can make it work. So yeah, he'll probably just have to, you know, put some heat, something on it, Cerakote it, try and keep the heat in. The fan may just take some beating. There's not a whole lot of room to work with, so gotta do what you gotta do. Alright, so good news, radiator is mounted. Only concern now is that now that I got the top mounts, because I did cut those bottom pegs off to scoot the radiator more under the core support, now the bottom end's kind of floating a little bit, so there is a stud over here. So in the meantime, I'm not concerned with that. I'll address that when I come back to it. I'm just going to bend up a little L tab and figure something out. It's either that or I'll just make a little tab down there and insert a Rivnut at the very bottom. Way down there, you can see that little bolt hole right there. I'll probably just use that. But in the meantime, I got the turbo clocked. We're looking pretty good here. So I'm going to go eat lunch first, and then we're going to pull this thing off. We're going to chop it off, and then we're going to weld this guy on here. And then from there, next step would be scoot the intercooler over just a little bit, because the guy was a little cockeyed when he set this thing up, so he asked me to recenter it. And then we can start building charge pipes. So we're steady making progress now that this situation is pretty much handled. So now that the turbo is partially modified, we got the compressor housing sitting perfect where we want it. The only other issue that I forgot about until just now is that the turbo is not finally bolted up. So the issue initially was he had to use a T3 to T4 adapter flange for the manifold, or the turbo headers, whatever you would call them. So he's running this adapter, which doesn't straighten the turbo, which doesn't help, but that's not so much the issue as he can't get all the hardware in because of just the tight fitment. So I am going to kind of cheat a little bit, and we're just going to ditch half the hardware. So I'm going to weld nuts to the compressor, or to the exhaust housing itself. So basically this whole video at this point is just going to be modifying just the turbo to start fitting this Mustang. So I'm going to pull the turbo off really quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, if any of you guys have ever turboed anything before and you've had to bolt your turbo on and off, or you have a turbo car or whatever, you know just how tedious it is really to get these bolts on and off. Sometimes you'll get lucky and there will be studs on your manifold or your pipe, whatever you're working with. But in this case, that's not really the situation. So that is another option, is I could weld studs onto that thing, but then the issue pursues of, you know, going through and trying to feed the nuts in for like there and then tighten them down. Like, how do you tighten that down? Like, There is no room. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to try and take the exhaust housing off of the turbo now, and then I'm going to grind this cast off here, and then we're going to need a torch because we're going to need to preheat this really well. And then I do have some nuts at home, and I might have some here. I'll check. But basically, I'm just going to be welding nuts onto this, and then that will make it so our turbo is good to go. So in this case, I will be using a 309 filler rod. So I usually use milder stainless hardware, but the 309 is a good happy medium for welding to cast when it comes to iron and steel stuff. So I've had really good luck with that before on my own setups, so shouldn't be a problem, especially for just holding some nuts in place. But yeah, that's going to solve that issue, and then it'll be much easier to feed the bolts into the bottom than it will be to screw nuts on from the top or feed bolts to the top. I went ahead and cleaned this thing up off of camera, so it's kind of hard to tell, but you can kind of see that I took the carbide burr bit and I cleaned off the heavy casting marks and then hit it with the sanding disc and wiped it with acetone. So I don't have the hardware that I need with me today. So we'll pick this thing up and we'll finish prepping this turbo for you guys and then call that a video and wrap it up on the morrow. So see you guys in the morning. Back the next day now, so got my propane torch here, got my M10 weld nuts that I decided to use. So just like I said in the last couple clips, we're just going to preheat this thing and go ahead and weld these things on. So got to switch my torch back over from, you know, aluminum stuff to steel. So really not that hard. The only other thing I do want to note is it may not be as critical in this case because we're just doing nuts, but any normal application where you're doing casts like this, you have to preheat, but then you also have to post heat, kind of cool it down more together, if that makes sense. So because this is much thicker and this property inside this metal is different than that of this, this is going to cool down a lot slower than this is. So to keep it from cracking off, especially when you're doing a more intricate thing like, say, converting turboflange to a V-band instead of a bolted setup, or adding a wastegate onto the compressor house or the turbine housing here, whatever the case, either use the torch to cool it slowly by keeping heat on it like a little bit at a time, or I usually just wrap it in a towel, or you can put it in like a bucket of sand, and either way works fine. So you saw me preheat it, we welded it, I welded it hot, I'm running like 110 amps, my torch is rated for like 125. So we ran it pretty hot, got a good puddle in there, and we laid 2 good stitches on there for each side of the nut. And now you can see I got the towel wrapped in it, and I just got the turbo propped up. So I got the bulk of the towel where the 2 nuts are that I welded. So I'm going to let those ones cool for probably a good 15 minutes, and then I'll go ahead and do the other 2, and we'll get it bolted up onto the car, and I can show you guys what it looks like when we're done and we can wrap this thing up. I'd say we're looking pretty good here. Look at that, it's all bolted up. So I only have 3 bolts on hand right now, but yeah, so now I can finally go through and start getting to work on this car now that the turbo is fully modified. So yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have had to do stuff like this before, because this is my second time having to modify both sides of the turbo, because I did it on my Integra too. But yeah, I think it's looking great. And on that note, guys, I'm just going to wrap it up here for the video. It is obviously the next day. It is a chilly, gloomy day today. It's drizzly and cold, and winter's really kicking off here in Arizona now. But I got some work to do, so I'm going to go ahead, reposition this intercooler, get started on the charge pipe, and I will catch up with you guys in the next video. I'm just going to get some work done, so expect some recap of what I'm about to do in one of the next videos. I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing, but anyways, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you have considered subscribing by now. If you want to help support the channel like this is my Douche Love Figure with the Rest long sleeve. It's got my little logo right there and stuff, says it on the sleeves. I don't know, nice little shirt. You can find that as well as my other merch in the Big Cartel link in the description. And if you ever feel so inclined, I do have a P.O. box you can send stuff to. And I am also a Vivid Racing affiliate person, and I have a link. So if you use that link, click on it, go buy anything from Vivid Racing, whether it be an air freshener or a full turbo system. It helps me, which in turn helps support the channel to where I can stop working on other people's stuff for a change, and I can work on my own stuff. And anyways, guys, do what you love, forget about the rest. Thanks for spending some time with me here today. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.